This is breaking news from Las Vegas Review-Journal, sponsored by Michael Gaughan's South Point Hotel, Casino, and Spa.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jen Ah, coming to you live from the Review-Journal studio. We're about to hear from the Clark County School Board President, Linda Cavazos, as she prepares for a possible vote tomorrow that could remove her as president. The board is scheduled to meet on Thursday at 5 p.m. One agenda item they will consider is whether or not to remove Cavazos as president. Another item they will consider is a possible vote on terminating CCSD Superintendent Jesus Jara's contract. School Board Trustee Lola Brooks called for the agenda item on Cavazos. In a letter to Cavazos, which Brooks released to the Review-Journal on Saturday, Brooks alleges the board has received reports from a number of principals that Cavazos reached out to them directly in an effort to oust the superintendent with a vote of no confidence. According to Brooks, her relationship with Cavazos turned sour after Cavazos allegedly leaked confidential information from a closed session to an employee union. As for Superintendent Jara's contract, Cavazos says she supported putting that item on the agenda for tomorrow's meeting. Back in May, the school board voted 4-3 to extend Jara's contract. However, Cavazos was one of the 3 board members who voted against that motion. Jara's contract is currently set to expire on January 15th, 2023. Last month, Cavazos revealed she had received death threats after the board moved forward with a COVID vaccination mandate for CCSD employees. Cavazos has been the school board president since January, when she was elected to succeed Brooks in that role. For those of you just joining us, we're getting ready for a press conference with the school board president. It looks like it's just about to start. Let's take a listen.
We're going to do the 30-second countdown, so I had to remember that we are not at a board meeting. First of all, I want to thank everyone for being here today. Education is a very important topic, anything having to do with our children. What better backdrop could we have than a playground over here with children playing? I'd much rather have the cameras directed at our children playing than at me, but that's not the way it is today. So I'd like to start out with a general statement, some remarks. I will be taking some questions at the end, but I do have to remind everybody, and I know that all of our media folks are quite cognizant that I must remain under open meeting law parameters because of our agenda items for tomorrow. So I'm Linda Cavazos. I'm president of the Clark County School Board. I represent District G, Parkdale Community Center. And with Laura Deering School very close next to us, this is my district. I want to thank Parkdale Community Center, Alex Bernal, and the whole community for allowing me to have this event here today. On January 6th, 2020, as the Clark County School Board of Trustees was concluding their new officer elections, all of us saw alarming images of people crashing through the gates, windows, and doors of our nation's capital. That day is now frequently referred to as the January 6th insurrectionist storming by domestic terrorists. As I was elected unanimously that morning by my peers, I never thought that as a school board president that my peers and I would be subjected on a lesser scale to death threats, personal attacks on our families, and attempts to disrupt and shut down our business meetings while still dealing with a terrifying pandemic. Board presidents across the nation have had to deal with these attempted disruptors while trying so hard to hear the pleas and concerns of our parents, educators, and the community about masks, vaccines, transportation, academic achievement, overcrowded classes, lack of services for our special needs and ELL students, substitute and driver shortages, educator shortages, and resignations, toxic school climate and culture, the mental health of both our students and educators, and racism in our schools. We have dealt with these challenges, and I'm proud to say that we have never had a meeting shut down or failed to complete our agendas. We persevered, but much remains to be done regarding the many issues that I just cited. Our educators, parents, and community deserve much credit for everything that they did to get us through that really difficult time. So today, why am I here? I wish to state to you that we face the crisis of a divided Board of Trustees, one that has struggled to come to consensus on many important issues that directly or indirectly affect our students, educators, and community. As a result of that division, caused by many factors, I have no choice today but to sadly but adamantly refute and deny as truth many of the statements that have been made in a letter released publicly by Trustee Lola Brooks in support of an agenda item requesting that I be removed as board president. The fact that this item was added very soon after another agenda item concerning the superintendent's employment was quite frankly disheartening. Such a blatant display of retaliation occurring during a time when many students and our own educators are stating and reporting that intimidation and retaliation openly exists in our district was very distressing. This is something that can no longer be ignored, and it must be addressed. I, for one, will not look the other way. Other statements made by two other trustees who requested this item may be addressed at tomorrow's board meeting. Additional reference materials are being added this afternoon, if they have not already been added, to board docs. In closing, as the board president, I have made mistakes. I have not always gone in the absolutely best direction, but I have tried my best to place the interest of our students, our educators, and our community first, because they are my constituents, and they elected me to represent them, not the one single employee that the trustees supervise. It is my wish that we can all go forward, find a path forward with civility, respect, and trust. I'm sorry, I'm trying to read my scribbles here. We have to do that. We have to find a path forward in collaboration because our kids are depending on us. I thank you again for being here today, and I will take a few questions that are within the parameters of open meeting law. Thank you. Tiffany?
Thank you. President Cavazos, in that letter from Lola Brooks, it talks about receiving reports from numerous principals that you had reached out to them directly in an effort to oust Superintendent Jara by publicly humiliating him through a vote of no confidence. Is this true?
No, it is not true. Dave?
You speak of the need for collaboration. What would that look like within the context of a school board meeting and school board deliberation?
Dave, I believe that has to look at that we all consider that we have 7 different people and personalities on this board. We have to look more at our commonalities and not our differences, and that we have to always put the needs of our children first, and that we're going to have to find a new way. I believe that communication is the foundation of any kind of effective governance. And if we cannot find that new way of communicating, it's going to be very difficult. So that's one way that I see that it's going to look like. Go ahead.
So what do you think that would look like? What would you get? What would collaboration look like? And how would you know when you found commonalities? What is that?
I think that we would have to look, I would want it to look like us coming together to be able to discuss differences, because I think right now we're at an impasse, so to speak, where we just come to like a brick wall. So instead of seeing like maybe a transparent wall where you can look at the other side and you can consider their opinions, I think that right now we're at a point, if you've watched any of our board meetings, and again, I just want to tell you, if you have Netflix or Amazon Prime, you should maybe consider that on Thursday nights instead of the board meetings, because you have to have a very strong constitution to make it through that. And I say that lightly, but what I'm saying here is that if you've watched any of the board meetings, you see that sometimes that impasse that we come to, I feel that we are not coming collaboratively together to look at the other person's perspective and then to find the best, I want to say, compromise. Yes.
Victoria Chenoweth. I spoke to
Hi, Victoria. Finally meet. Nice to meet you.
I spoke with some of the trustees who have called to discuss your title. They allege some bulliness on your part and that you are creating a toxic work environment, micromanaging on some issues that they don't think that you are supposed to be doing. What's your response to that?
Victoria, do you want to break that into more than one part? Is there a part that has to do with bullying, and then is it connected up with micromanaging?
They say that you are, coming on them for their social media use, whereas your priorities are not towards the students and the staff, and that your priorities are with what they are doing on social media. And
Okay.
trying to control that.
All right, I understand now. Thank you. I think I want to respond to that by first addressing the bullying part. I am a person that when we get a public records request or we get something that's a inquiry about social media, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, whatever, I am never somebody that ever has to go back and search through those emails or the social media posts. I have very seldom ever had to delete anything from a social media post. So I will adamantly and invite you all to look at my social media that there has been no bullying. Now, I'd like to address, Victoria, if you wish, the other part of your question. As far as, was it micromanaging of social media or?
Yes, micromanaging social media, talking about the issues that they're bringing up on social media, whereas they say that maybe your priorities aren't towards the CCSD staff and students, but you're more focused on what they post about social media on some hot topics, political topics.
Ah, okay, now I understand, and thank you for clarifying that. I will say that when I see a social media post that directly refutes what the superintendent and the board of trustees have decided on, I will ask that person a question about it. I have not, and again, I invite you to look at my social media. I am not somebody that gets into back and forth, and I don't see it as being constructive. I'm a former high school teacher. I think most of you know that I'm a therapist. I used to be a family court mediator, and so that's non-constructive to me. So again, I invite you to look at that, and I do deny and refute that. I will put social media posts on there that I will answer people's questions, but you will not see me in a back and forth arguing. I don't think that's respectful. I don't think that's a good role model for our children. And while we're speaking about role models, some of the behavior that's been exhibited at board meetings, I will tell you right now, our kids are watching, and we're supposed to be the adults in the room. So no, I would have to say I completely refute that. Thank you for the question. Yes.
Gene Shields with Los Angeles Mutual. You're the president of the board. With these factors leading up to the decision for tomorrow, do you take any responsibility for this, for everything that's happening?
Are you referring to just this one item on 3.02?
I'm referring to the letter and the aspects prior to today.
Okay, and thank you for that question. The reason I asked you to elaborate is because I've been getting a lot of questions where it's been rolled into two different topics. Yes, I do take responsibility. There were some times where I feel that I could have handled situations a little bit better. We all make mistakes, but that's not an excuse, so I would own my accountability. And accountability and accessibility are two very important things to me in this district. Thank you for the question. Tiffany, I'm going to go to this gentleman here first.
Jeremy with Channel 13.
Hi, Jeremy. How are you?
Doing well. Within the Will versus letter, it mentions that the last article to actually send that and make this action for moving and board president was the fact that you and the trustees said move forward with discussing ending Superintendent Jara's contract. Can you kind of clarify, the reasoning behind all of this, because it seems pretty implied in Will versus letter that for whatever reason you have something out against
Jeremy, I'm going to ask you if you could shorten that, which is the bottom line question.
The bottom line question, how would you respond to accusations you have now for Superintendent Jara, especially the fact that you brought this item forward to talk about it?
All right, so publicly, Trustee Ford has already released that she was the initial requester. And so there's a little bit of confusion over majority votes, in our district and our meetings. It has to be 4 out of 7. So for a special meeting or a special agenda item that to be placed on the agenda or a completely separate meeting, we have a redistricting special meeting coming up, you only need 3 trustees. So Trustee Ford was the initial requester, Trustee Guzman was the second who concurred, and I was the third. In response to your bottom line question, which I thank you for, no, I do not have it out for anyone. I do not want to speak to anything having to do with performance, but I will say that no, I do not have it out for anyone. I want to further add, though, that as I put in my remarks, when I see certain things happening, we tell our kids, if you see something, say something. We have to follow that ourselves, and we have to be able to stand up and be able to address the issues that we see. Thank you for the question. I'm so sorry, Jackie. When did you sneak in? I didn't see you, sorry. Go ahead.
I have a two-part question.
Okay.
I'm going to give you guys off that one. You mentioned there was some concerns at the very beginning of this. Was there any one event that precipitated Trustee Ford filing that agenda item request, and you yourself and the one other trustee concurring with it? And secondly, do you have a board vote you think to move forward with it?
Boy, Jackie, I can always depend on you to just get me there. The first part that you're asking about, I have to speak carefully on this. I know that you are extremely familiar with open meeting law. Yes, in answer to your question, which I believe was there an event that precipitated this? I don't want to overstep boundaries in speaking for Trustee Ford, but yes, there was a set, if you don't mind, I'm going to call it a set of circumstances, maybe a domino effect. And so that is the answer to your first question. Confidentiality measures prevent me from going into any specifics.
Will that be revealed at the board meeting tomorrow?
That really depends on how the discussion goes. I did put in one of my tweets, and I know that somebody here asked me about it, I had stated that the item 3.02 that is on the agenda for my removal as president, that it could possibly, depending on how the discussion goes, it could precipitate that other issues, excuse me, losing my voice, other issues could possibly lead to discussion involving other trustees' actions. That's the most careful way I can put it. Your last question, Jackie, I believe was, do you want to go ahead and say it again?
Do you think you have a board vote on the agenda item regarding the superintendent's contract?
I have my opinions, but because it is an action item for tomorrow, I am not allowed to comment on that. I know you understand. Thank you. There's somebody over here. I think it was Tiffany and then Dave.
I have 2 questions actually. So the first one is, we have, as you mentioned, so much going on with the district. We have bus driver shortage, we have teachers with issues with their health trust, we have students who are late to class because of bus issues. And here we are again, another meeting where we're talking about issues about the board going at it, the superintendent's contract. How can we even ensure for people in the community, staff members, community members, parents, that their issues are even being addressed while everyone's trying to focus on all the issues with the superintendent and the trustees?
Thank you, Tiffany, for the question. First of all, we have to do better. We have to do better. We can't be letting these distracting issues take away from exactly what you were talking about here, and which I already mentioned in my general remarks. I think the public has been getting more involved. They've been writing in. They have, I don't want to say attacked us, but they've been very assertive on social media and in basically our district emails. We need to find a way that what is not happening in our district right now, that should be happening, has to go forward. And so that involves a lot of these issues. One thing that I'd like to highlight, if you don't mind, for your question, is what I mentioned as far as toxic school climate and culture. So I have a lot of times people will say, well, Trustee Cavazos, why are you talking about this? Why do you talk so much about safety and mental health? And what about our achievement gap? What about, what's happening in our schools, as far as kids not being able to know how to read or their math scores are low? I look at the whole child. Again, as a former teacher and as a therapist, I get accused of, all that warm and fuzzy stuff. Guess what? If we don't look at that warm and fuzzy stuff, if we don't look at our children as whole, they are not just a data point on a computer screen. They are whole children that have issues. So I think our community has to demand more, and I believe the Board of Trustees, and I'm going to refer to Dave's question too, is what it's going to look like. If we're not able to find a way to come together on this, our decisions affect everyone. And we get a lot of questions about what's operational, what's oversight. And, it's one of those things where the excuses, I think I put that on one of my tweets. It was like hashtag color me tired of excuses. I can't make excuses anymore. The whole board can't make excuses anymore. We have to do better for our children. I think you had a second part.
Yeah, the second part, Trustee Brooks in the letter gave you 3 options to remedy the situation. Why did you choose to go with the third option of having it in the public forum?
First of all, I don't think that Trustee Brooks or any other trustee, or myself included, can just issue an ultimatum such as, I'm going to give you 3 choices. I think that right away, just even that vernacular, even the way that it's stated, is not very collaborative. And so being somebody that believes in transparency and that we need to actually get those facts out there, my immediate response was, we've already talked about some of these things. We've already discussed this. People have watched us for hours where it goes, the conversation goes in a circular fashion, then it goes back, and then it does a U-turn. I think they're tired of that, Tiffany. I think that with me, I looked at it and I just said, you know what? This is the time and this is the place, and some of this needs to come out in public. I don't want anybody to accuse me of you're trying to broker a deal in a back room, because that already happens way too much. So that's my answer to that. Did you have a follow-up?
Right, I do have one. There were rumors going around that we were actually trying to have Dr. Jara's contract actually put in the consent agenda rather than a special item at the beginning of the meeting. Can you just address if that's accurate or not, or if that's even possible, if that process is possible?
Okay, let me get that straight. That I was trying to place it in the consent agenda?
Yeah, there are just rumors in the community going around. Can you address that, and is that even possible as the president of the school board of trustees to even do that?
Normally, the consent agenda is put together, scheduled, and compiled by the superintendent and his staff. If you know yourself that there's all these different parts to the consent agenda. There's purchasing, there's things having to do with transportation, there's all different categories there. This is the first I'm hearing of this rumor, and believe me, I've heard a lot in the last week, but I've not heard that one, and my answer is no, there was never any effort on my part. Dave, I'm sorry?
What do you ultimately hope to achieve with this news conference, and are you concerned about blowback?
I'm going to address the second part, Dave, if you don't mind. I'm not too concerned about blowback, because what else can they do? What else can they do? When you've had death threats, when you've had to put in an extra security system, when you already have a security system, when you have people spreading untrue statements about you, the blowback would be the least of my problems. You've known me for a while, you know that I'm pretty thick-skinned. My kids like to say that, I've survived, 5 children, so, if really, I mean, the canas, the gold, the gray hairs, they're there, okay? But that would be the least of my concerns, because I think that you have to stand up for when you see wrongs being done, and you're either going to stand up for your morals and your ethics, but if you're going to be someone that the last person you talk to or special interest over here affects you, then you're going to lose your way. So that's the second part. First part, Can you repeat it, Dave?
What do you hope to achieve from this news conference?
One of the things I hope to achieve, and I'll just say this out, just openly, is that I'm hoping that we can tamp down some of the concerns before tomorrow's meeting. It may get the opposite effect, and maybe where riles people up more. If that's what it does, so be it. I would have to say my main goal tonight is transparency and getting this out in the open, because there are so many folks, and I hear from them constantly, like, how come we didn't know about this? And how come you guys are talking about this? And, what did you decide in a back room or a closed session? And we're not allowed, by law, we cannot discuss or divulge anything that's in a closed session. So what I'm hoping to accomplish is that somewhere our colleagues can come together and we can figure out that path forward. Because as I said at the end of my remarks, our kids are depending on us. I mean, what is the main concern if you are on the Board of Trustees? As a former teacher, I have to tell you, it's our children, their physical, academic, mental, and emotional welfare. If our children are not okay, then you know what? We need to be out of a job. We're not doing our job if they're not okay. Thank you, Dave, for the question. Yes?
Take a step back and look at the big picture here.
Sure.
Your future as president is going to be discussed tomorrow. Superintendent Jara's job will be discussed tomorrow. Parents sitting at home, seeing as the two top officials of the school district, their jobs, it seems like the two of you are at odds. What would you say to parents about questioning why is this fighting at the top of the school district, and how is that affecting my children and the school district? What would you say to parents?
Good question. And I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
I'm Kim from Foxfire.
Thank you. I remember talking with you. We kind of had a little back and forth texting thing going there. First of all, I do want to clarify that my job is not at stake. It's just the title, the position. And just to let you know that unlike Trustee Brooks and Trustee Wright that came right before me, I have never intended, I made it quite clear that I was not going to try to get a second consecutive term as president. So it's not my job, it's just, you know what I really have left? Let's see, this is what, the end of October? I have 2 months left, like 60 days. The very first work session in January is when we elect a new slate of officers. So anyway, I wanted to clarify that because people were asking me, are you going to be removed from the board? I said, they're still stuck with me for at least another year. The other question I think is more important, Kim, and that's the one that you asked about parents, almost the same as what I answered Tiffany, and that's that this is, again, a very, very deep lack of communication, because we only have one employee. All the other employees, the teachers, the support professionals, they are all under the oversight of the superintendent. The superintendent is our only employee. So again, I would have to go back to my mantra of finding a path forward, and there has to be a way that the Board of Trustees and the superintendent can collaboratively work together as a team. That's what I would want to tell parents. And I'm just going to throw in, we have to do better. Yes?
If tomorrow happens to be your last day as president, what do you hope you will point to as your tenure as president of the board?
I didn't hear the very last part. I can't hear you very well.
What would you like people to point to as your tenure as president of the board if tomorrow happens to be your last day?
Well, first of all, I should have taken that picture of my office with the plaque that said president. I should have done that to begin with. I think I might have one around somewhere. It sounds like you're asking me, like, what would I see as my legacy for this year, this 10 months or whatever?
In this position.
In this position, not like the other 3 years. First of all, I am proud to say that I am one of a limited number of districts across the whole United States that was able to get a safe storage, I guess you would call it, I think our formal name was safe storage firearm resolution. That went out to over 300,000 homes. I'm sure you guys are cognizant that we did have a lot of publicity about suicides. Some of those suicides, and again, I cannot quote confidential details, but one is too many, all right? But we had several that were carried out with firearms that were left unsecured in the home. So that's one thing. The other thing is that during this tenure, with all of this going on and the pandemic, I want to say that we've shown a laser-like focus on the inequities in some of, I don't want to just say our zip codes, but all of these things, mental health, the suicide rate, the digital divide, these aren't new. I'm old. I've been around for a while. So these were already here before, but the pandemic forced us to shine that light so we could say, how come these kids have this, but these kids don't? What's happening over here with our ELL program? What's happening over here with our special needs kids? And again, what's happening with the educators that we are entrusting our children to for several hours a day? If we're not taking care of them, then how are they going to take care of our kids? So those are a couple of things. I could be on the soapbox and you'd be stuck here for a while. Yes. Hi.
Do you think Jara should remain the superintendent, and if so, why?
Jackie, did you work with him? I am, again, because that is, if you look at the agenda, if there's something that just says discussion, but if you see something that says discussion, possible action, we cannot comment on that. We're just prevented by open meeting law violation. But thank you for the question. Yes.
Channel 3.
Hi.
Why now? Why come out now knowing that you already knew the communication issues with the other board trustees? Why not come out with and saying, is it because you were accused of certain things, or why now to come out and talk about it?
Okay, I'm not sure if you're asking me why now that I'm addressing this, or why now did they do this?
No. Why now are you talking to us about the problems that are going on communication-wise with the other board of trustees? Knowing that it's been going on for quite some time now, that why are you letting us know now?
Okay, well, first of all, I want to correct some misinformation. I've been talking about these things since August 17th, August 17th, when I was first appointed. I took Trustee Aaron Craner's place, and then I ran for election in 2018. Since, I would say, I think it took me about 2 or 3 weeks to recover from the fire hose of the training. I had about 1 week to kind of get everything together before, I think the first meeting I walked into, we were looking at a $42 million cut in our budget. So it is not just now that I'm talking about this. I've been talking about this the whole time. But I'm only one trustee, a president, vice president, clerk. We don't have any more power than anybody else. We're all equal. So I just want to say that I have been talking about this to the point that many people have asked me to shut up and to quit talking about some of these things, especially mental health, safety, and taking care of our educators. But thank you for the question. It allowed me to clarify that.
One quick question. If the president has the same role as the other trustees, what's the point of the decision of the election?
You know what, Kim? That's an excellent question. So you're asking if we all have like the same power? I guess it's about titles, and I guess titles mean a lot more. We have a little bit more, shall we say, flexibility, like for instance with the agenda. I have to approve the draft agenda before it goes out to the trustees. I can move things around. I have a little bit more wherewithal, like on committees, things like that. It's a lot of work. I appear at a lot of events. I am glad to be there. This week and next week I'm doing school visits, and I did have somebody, I'll be very honest with you, that reached out to me, I want to say yesterday, and they said, hey, and this is somebody I know, it's an acquaintance, are you doing all these school visits now to look good because now they have this thing on the agenda? I said, these visits have to be scheduled like weeks in advance because we have to be very considerate of the principal and what's going on. Can we visit a class? I went to a couple of elementary schools on Monday. Yesterday, I don't know if anybody saw my videos, but I visited the amazing, and I'm actually wearing their colors tonight, Las Vegas High School Wildcats. Did anybody see the video of Mariachi Hoya? Yes, they are amazing. They represented us at the inauguration in Nevada. These are things that, you know, I don't have to do as president. We're all invited to those. This morning, I visited a school in Trustee Garcia Morales' district that we were all invited to. And just to tell you, juniors and seniors, their teacher tasked them with writing redistricting, putting together redistricting maps that they thought they could do better than our internal staff. I'm not even going to look at Fernando on that question on everything, because I know he's going to have a comment on that. Let me tell you, they did an amazing job. When you walk into those classrooms, Kim, and you see the teachers, whether they're pre-K or high school, let me just tell you, I wear out my welcome every single time. They have to kick me out. So anyway, few little things that we have, but I mean, I'm talking like globally, generally. But good question. Jackie, I think you were next.
Yeah, so last summer, 2020, there was a similar agenda item, and there was a lot of build-up, and then we got there, and the other half of the board essentially shut it down before there was a conversation. What happened if there was similar occurrence this time? Where do we go here? You mentioned there has to be a path forward, but what is that?
I think we all have to, I think it's compromise. I think that personal agendas need to go out the window, and it's going to have to be where egos and the personal agendas, and maybe you have not you, but maybe one board member has a personal envision of how things should look. If we are not able to look at every single person on that board and say, I don't really like what she has, the opinion about this, but you know what? She has a really good, innovative idea over here. And this person over here maybe contributes something else. And we all come from different, backgrounds. We all come from different, shall we say, occupations, jobs, everything. So when you're saying, it kind of makes me feel like you're asking, like, what's changed, or why are we still, like, stuck here? Something that. Okay, so I'm going to address this from a different angle, Jackie. I'm going to say that we have 3, I don't want to say new board members. They worked very hard to learn the ropes, coming from different backgrounds. So we did switch from last year, where we had 3 board members, 12 years of experience, 12 years. And that was Dr. Young, Chris Garvey, and Deanna Wright. Kudos to them. I don't know that I would still be standing, after 12 years. It's only been 4 years with me, and I'm not ready to keel over, but you remember that was one of the issues then. We have 3 new board members that come on. They're going to bring a different dynamic, just as if you had like your staff shaken up, or, a classroom teachers, their classes get changed. Right now they're covering for other classes. We have principals and cabinet members that are going into the schools because we don't have enough subs. So the 3 board members coming on there, that changed the dynamic. The second part of your question having to do with where do we go from there, I honestly don't know, and I don't have a problem saying that. I think a lot of it is going to depend on the discussion tomorrow. If you don't mind, I'm going to piggyback on your question there. We have some very important things on the agenda tomorrow. We have the anti-racism policy. I believe it's 6.01. That's going to be the first draft that we're going to see from the task force. We have 2 contracts. We have a couple of policies. We have very important things. The worst thing I can envision tomorrow is seeing us get stuck on 301 and 302. And what about all of our people that are there that have been waiting this long about the anti-racism policy, the educators that have been waiting about their contracts? So I really can't answer that until I see what happens tomorrow. So are you going to do the Netflix thing, or are you going to come to the meeting? I'm putting her on the spot now. Anybody else? Yes, Dave.
Could you talk about the tone of school board meetings recently and how you and your colleagues feel when you listen to people get up and the anger that's in the room?
Thank you, Dave. And I did touch on that just briefly. I will say that I had 15 years as a high school educator, saw a lot of conflicts, a lot of things happen. I was then a mediator down at family court, at divorce court. Back in the olden days at one of my other counseling offices, I would sometimes walk out at night and there'd be people waiting for me because my report was the one that made the decision in the judge's child custody or whatever. So when we look at this right now, first of all, I don't scare easily, but I will say, and I don't know how many of you saw some of the meetings that we had to move to the Clark County Government Center. There were some times there that it was very disturbing. It was very disturbing. I saw mask mandates not being, shall we say, enforced. I saw people shouting at us. I was called names that I was mortified that we had kids watching. So it's a feeling that I think that with all 7 board members, it's different. I saw some of my colleagues that were absolutely just ready to break down. I wasn't one of them. I think I was filled with just shock, anger, and just disbelief. I would have to say disbelief. And now that we have federal authorities that are addressing that, they're looking at this, our attorney generals across the United States are looking at this, and it's a very odd feeling. It's a feeling of not just being personally attacked, but this is a business meeting, and it's almost like you feel like your whole entity, you know, collectively, all of us. Every single time that our police directed us, pointed at us and said, President Cavazos, leave the dais. I was the last one. I mean, they have to push me back there because I want to stay and talk to people and find out, why do you feel this way? Why can we not have a conversation without you screaming and calling us profanity?
So in some ways, we were talking and asking you questions about disunity on the board, but it sounds like a target, the focus, also has kind of a unifying effect on the board.
I didn't hear the very last part, Dave.
Does the anger that's focused on the board help to unify the board conversely?
In some ways, yes, I would say so. I would say so. And as I mentioned in my remarks, you know, we're not always going to agree with everyone, and there were people that felt very strongly. And there was, and I'm going to go ahead and just throw this out there. Nobody's asked me this. I was kind of waiting for Jackie to ask me this, but I don't know if she was going to get around to it. But it had to do with a tweet that I put out that was just blown up all over, where they said that I had called parents, I know Tiffany knows about this, where I had called parents insurrectionists. I never did that. Parents and educators in the community are who we have to listen to. If anybody went back and read the actual tweet, I was talking about people who came there solely for the reason to disrupt. We found out later on by doing a little bit of digging that the majority of those folks did not even have children in the district. Some of them did not live in Clark County. Some of them came from Utah. They came from other states. And we did find out in one case that one person actually was working for somebody who is running for state office and had been trained, and basically they had all the same taglines, they had all the same basically shtick, you know, their script. And if you looked at something that was happening in Mesa, Arizona, or in Colorado Springs, or in LA, it was almost exactly the same script. And yes, I did have to have some people removed, and I did have to have some people trespassed because they were trying to shut down the meeting. So I hope that answers your question. Tiffany?
Is there any update on the vaccine mandate for staff, and have there been any discussions with any of the local unions about that?
Tiffany, all we've been told, the Board of Trustees, is that we do not have anything put together yet that is definitive. We have been told that there are ongoing talks happening with the unions, because of course they do have to be included on that. The board has not been given any plan, so to speak, and I'm glad you asked that, because I had a couple of inquiries from support professionals today who were worried about their jobs, and I said, we have not received anything for either licensed personnel or support personnel.
So there's no update, we don't even know if this semester will even include that.
We have not received an update. But yes.
I was wondering if the last time you tried to initiate a meeting with Superintendent Jara regarding your concerns, or if you have initiated any meeting with him.
I would have to look back, and I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Oh, I'm sorry, Julie from the Review Journal.
Julie, didn't recognize you. I think you had your hair different last time or whatever, you know. I would have to look back and see. There are a lot of times where it's just texts and it's emails. Some of you probably in the room know Mr. Joe Caruso, who's absolutely amazing. He's our board liaison, and we usually go through him to arrange things. I would have to go back and look. I know that there have been some one-on-one calls. For those of you not familiar, every other week the superintendent will have a one-on-one call with each trustee, either on the phone, in person. Sometimes I'll just have to do a Google Meet because my counseling office is all the way over by St. Rose, Siena. So sometimes it's a trek over there for just 1 hour to West Sahara. Greer's not quite so difficult. But I'd be glad to, I would be glad to look that up for you, Julie, and get back to you. I have your number. Okay, absolutely. Yes.
Outside of the media that's here, there's obviously people that are here. Are you feeling some semblance of support going into from?
I have to say that I have been completely overwhelmed and touched by the amount of support. Is that what you're asking me, whether I received support? That's why sometimes I have to resort to Twitter. I had to shut down my Instagram account because of the threats. I was able to configure, I would say to a great extent, Twitter and Facebook, a lot of family stuff. But when I had attacks where they were going after my children, my grandchildren, I was even getting attacks to where they were looking up old photos of my relatives in Arizona, where I'm from, and they were attacking them. But for tomorrow, I have felt just a huge groundswell of support. And just to be quite honest, I realize that there's not everybody that's going to support me, and that's okay. That's okay. But I have received so many expressions of support from groups and individuals that I've had to resort to social media to thank them, because I can't thank everybody individually. Thank you for that question. Doing well? Fernando, you're very quiet here. I was looking for your press badge. You have that hidden. Are we good? All right. Thank you again to everyone. I can't thank you enough for being here and for your insightful questions and for your patience with me as far as the questions I can answer and the ones I cannot. Thank you so much. I've memorized all your faces, so I know I'm going to see you at the board meeting tomorrow, right? And this meeting tonight was being streamed by Battleborn Progress on their Facebook page. And as you know, ccsd.net, and Vegas PBS, they stream our regular meetings. It also comes out, a lot of people don't know this, but our meetings also are televised on Channel 4. So thank you very much for being here. I appreciate all of you and your interest in this. Thank you.
You just heard from Clark County School Board President Linda Cavazos, as her job is now up in the air. A possible vote tomorrow may or may not remove her as president. Now, she spoke about the fact that school board members are divided in a lot of issues, according to her. She also vehemently denied the allegations made by school board trustee Lola Brooks. We'll have much more for you on the story online at lvrj.com. You can also watch our weekday newscast, 7 at 7 a.m. and p.m., available on all your streaming platforms. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We'll be seeing you here in a few hours at 7 tonight.
You've been watching breaking news from the Las Vegas Review Journal, sponsored by Michael Gaughan's South Point Hotel, Casino, and Spa.